The Whispering MRI. This is a true story. The names have been changed to protect those involved. But the events documented here occurred at Mercy Cross Private Hospital in Mexico City during October 2019. 3 patients heard voices coming from inside an MRI machine. 11 people died. And the machine that started it all is still running today, still scanning patients, still whispering. What you're about to hear isn't fiction, it's a warning. If a hospital patient tells you, "Don't take the metro on Friday night," and they turn out to be right, would you listen when the second patient says the same thing? What about the third? And what if you discovered that the people warning you were already dead when they gave their prophecies? This is what happened to Marcela Ruiz. And this is how she learned that some debts can never be paid and some machines should never have been built. Thursday, October 17, 2019, 11:47 p.m. The fluorescent lights in the hallway of Mercy Cross Hospital's radiology department hummed their endless monotone song, punctuated every few seconds by a sharp electric buzz that made Marcela flinch each time. She'd been working night shifts in this wing for 5 years, but she'd never gotten used to that sound. It reminded her of insects dying against a zapper or bones breaking under pressure. Marcela Rodriguez sat at the nurse's station on the second floor, filling out patient reports in handwriting that had devolved from neat cursive at the start of her shift to barely legible scratches now 3 hours before dawn. 29 years old, exhausted down to her bones, surviving on her 4th cup of coffee, and the knowledge that the 40% night shift differential on her paycheck was the only thing keeping her mother in cancer treatment. $800 a month for chemotherapy. $800 that her mother's insurance wouldn't cover. $800 that meant Marcela couldn't say no when administration asked her to take on extra overnight shifts. The night shift meant she worked alone. The MRI technician had clocked out at midnight after finishing the last scheduled scan. The radiologist was somewhere upstairs, probably asleep in the on-call room. The security guard made his rounds every hour, but otherwise Marcela had this entire wing to herself. 50 meters of sterile hallway fluorescent lights that flickered and hummed, and the MRI suite at the far end with its massive machine that cost more than Marcela would earn in a lifetime. She lived alone in a studio apartment 30 minutes away by Metro Line 3. Her boyfriend had left 3 weeks ago, tired of dating someone who was never home, who smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion, who fell asleep during movies and forgot birthdays because every day blurred into the next. "I can't do this anymore," he'd said. "You're never really here even when you're here." She hadn't argued. What could she say? He was right. The smell in this wing never changed. Antiseptic sharp enough to burn the inside of her nose mixed with something metallic that came from the MRI machine itself. The air conditioning kept the temperature at 18 degrees Celsius because the machine ran hot, and Marcela wore 2 layers under her scrubs and still felt cold. Her rubber-soled shoes squeaked against the linoleum floor every time she moved, an embarrassingly loud sound in the silence that made her feel like she was constantly announcing her presence to the empty halls. The red emergency lights at the end of the corridor blinked in steady rhythm, on, off, like a heartbeat, or like something breathing. Marcela tried to focus on her paperwork, but her attention kept drifting to the MRI suite. The door was closed. The lights were off. The machine had been shut down at 10:30 standard procedure. But she kept hearing something. Tock, tock, tock. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, coming from behind the closed door. Probably just the pipes, Marcela told herself. Old building changes in water pressure, thermal expansion. The hospital was built in the 70s. Everything creaked and groaned, but the knocking didn't sound like pipes. It sounded deliberate, rhythmic, like someone tapping out Morse code. Tock, 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 tock. Marcela put down her pen and listened. The sound stopped. She picked up her pen again. The knocking resumed. "It's just the building," she whispered to herself. but her voice sounded thin and unconvincing in the empty hallway. She turned back to her paperwork, determined to ignore it, when a different sensation crept up her spine. The feeling of being watched. Not the vague sense of unease that came from working alone at night. This was specific, pointed. Like someone standing directly behind her, staring at the back of her neck with such intensity that her skin prickled. Marcela spun around in her chair. The hallway stretched empty behind her. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, closed doors, nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it intensified. Her gaze was drawn to the MRI suite at the end of the hall, to the small window in the door that showed nothing but darkness beyond. Something about that darkness felt wrong. Too thick, too absolute. Like it wasn't just the absence of light, but something heavier, something that absorbed light and gave nothing back. Marcela stood up slowly. Her chair rolled backward and hit the wall with a soft thump that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. She walked toward the MRI suite, each step making her shoes squeak against the floor in a rhythm that seemed to mock her. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Getting closer, getting closer, getting closer. She reached the door and peered through the window. The MRI machine sat in the center of the room, a massive cylinder of white and gray metal, its bore opening like a mouth waiting to swallow patients whole. In the darkness, it looked less like medical equipment and more like something else. Something hungry. Marcela's breath fogged the window glass. She wiped it away with her sleeve and looked at the control station across the room. The computer monitors were all dark. Everything was powered down, except one screen. The patient scheduling monitor, which should have been blank, glowed with a soft blue light. And on that screen, in white text against the blue background, were two words. Patient waiting inside. Marcela's heart hammered against her ribs. That was impossible. No one was scheduled. The machine was off. The room had been locked since the last technician left. She pulled out her key card and swiped it through the reader. The lock clicked. She pushed the door open and reached for the light switch, flooding the room with harsh overhead lighting that made her squint. Empty. Completely empty. The MRI machine sat silent and still. The patient table was retracted. No one was inside the bore. No one was anywhere in the room. Marcela walked to the control station and looked at the monitor. The screen was black now, completely powered down, just as it should be. "The building's just settling," she said aloud, needing to hear a voice even if it was her own. "Old wiring, electrical interference." She turned to leave, and that's when the door slammed shut behind her. The sound was enormous in the enclosed space, like a thunderclap. Marcela spun around, her hand flying to her chest. The door stood closed even though she'd propped it open with her foot. Wind, she thought desperately. Air pressure from the ventilation system, the building's climate control adjusting, but there was no wind. The air in the room was perfectly still, and the ventilation system made a constant low hum that she would have heard change if it had suddenly kicked into higher gear. Marcela crossed the room quickly and opened the door. She stepped into the hallway and let the door close behind her this time, making sure not to touch it, making sure nothing was holding it. The door swung shut on its own hydraulic closer, smooth, and controlled nothing like the violent slam from before. She walked back to the nurse's station, refusing to look over her shoulder, refusing to acknowledge the feeling that something in that room had been aware of her presence and had wanted her to know it was there. The rest of the hour passed in tense silence. Marcela couldn't concentrate on her paperwork. She kept glancing at the MRI suite, at that dark window, wondering what she'd actually seen on the monitor. Wondering if she'd seen anything at all, or if exhaustion was finally catching up to her, making her imagine things that weren't there. At 1:15 a.m., her pager buzzed. Room 304. Roberto Salazar, post-MRI observation. Marcela gathered her tablet and headed upstairs, grateful for an excuse to leave the second floor, grateful for something normal to do, grateful to be around another human being, even if that human being was sedated and half asleep. Room 304 was at the end of another hallway, this one better lit, warmer, more recently renovated. Marcela knocked softly and entered. Roberto Salazar lay in bed, but his eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. He was 58 years old, CEO of a transportation company, admitted 3 days ago when headaches and vision problems led to the discovery of a benign brain tumor. Routine MRI scan earlier tonight to map the tumor before surgery. Standard procedure. Midazolam for sedation, morphine for pain management. He should have been asleep by now. Mr. Salazar. Marcela approached the bed and checked his vital signs monitor. Blood pressure normal. Heart rate slightly elevated, but within acceptable range. Are you feeling all right? Roberto's lips moved. He was counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, once doce. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Salazar, what are you counting? He turned his head slowly to look at her, and Marcela took an involuntary step backward. His eyes were wrong, too wide, too focused for someone who should be sedated. And there was something else in them, something that looked like terror barely held in check. They're counting, he whispered. Inside the machine, they count to 12, then they start over. 12, always 12. Marcela pulled up his chart on her tablet. You received midazolam, Mr. Salazar. It can cause auditory hallucinations. That's a normal side effect. What you heard was just the noise from the MRI combined with the medication. It wasn't the medication. Roberto's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. I heard them, very clearly. Not machine noise, voices, human voices, many voices speaking at the same time, all saying the same thing. Marcela gently tried to extract her wrist from his grip, but he held on. What did they say? His hand trembled. Jump. Jump down, subway Friday, Hidalgo Station, 9:15 at night, fast, no pain, freedom. The words hung in the air between them. Marcela felt cold spread through her chest. That's very specific for a hallucination, Mr. Salazar. That's what I'm trying to tell you. His eyes filled with tears. It wasn't a hallucination. They told me these things. They described... He swallowed hard. They described exactly how to do it, where to stand. When the train would come, they said it would be over in less than a second. They said I would finally be free. Marcela managed to pull her wrist free and made a note on his chart. Patient reports detailed auditory hallucinations post-MRI. Likely medication side effect. Monitor for psychological distress. Mr. Salazar, I need you to rest now. The medication will wear off by morning and you'll feel better. Your surgery is scheduled for Saturday and you need to be well rested. You take the subway home, don't you? Roberto was still looking at her with those two wide eyes. Line 3. You get off at Hidalgo Station and transfer to Line 2. Marcela's blood turned to ice water. How do you know that? They told me. They know your name. They know where you work, where you live, how you get home. He sat up in bed, pulling against the restraints that were supposed to keep him still. They said you'll be the last one, the one who closes the circle. They need 12. They still need one more. I'm going to call the doctor. Marcela backed toward the door, her heart pounding. You need a stronger sedative. Listen to me, Roberto's voice rose to a shout. They're waiting at Hidalgo Station every Friday at 9:15. They've been waiting for 41 years. They need 12 to balance the debt. Don't go there. Don't take the metro on Friday. Marcela pressed the call button and fled the room. Roberto's shouts following her down the hallway. 2 nurses rushed past her toward his room. She heard them trying to calm him, heard the doctor being paged. Heard Roberto screaming about voices and debts and the number 12 over and over until his words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. Marcela stood in the hallway shaking. Her wrist hurt where Roberto had grabbed her. When she looked down, she could see the red marks from his fingers, 5 distinct pressure points that would probably bruise by morning. The doctor arrived, gave Roberto something to knock him out, and 20 minutes later the hallway was quiet again. Marcela returned to her station, but she couldn't stop thinking about what Roberto had said. He knew she took Line 3. He knew she transferred at Hidalgo Station. Those were facts, not hallucinations. But they could be explained. He could have seen her arriving for work in her metro uniform before his admission. He could have overheard staff talking. He could have made an educated guess based on where the hospital was located and the most common routes. The specificity about Friday at 9:15 p.m., though, that was harder to dismiss. That felt like something more. Marcela opened her laptop and typed into Google MRI auditory hallucinations. Hundreds of results, medical journals, patient forums, Reddit threads. She spent the next hour reading, learning that it was actually fairly common for patients to report hearing voices or music during MRI scans. The machine was incredibly loud, sometimes reaching 110 decibels, and the combination of noise and sedation medication could cause the brain to interpret the mechanical sounds as speech or singing. Auditory pareidolia, one article called it. The same phenomenon that makes people hear words in random noise messages in records, played backward voices in white noise. Marcela felt herself relax. There was a scientific explanation. Roberto was experiencing a documented side effect. The voices weren't real. But then why did he know about Line 3 and Hidalgo Station? She dug deeper into her search, scrolling past the first few pages of results into the obscure forums and archived threads that most people never bothered to read. And there on page 5 of her Google search, she found something that made her stop breathing. A Reddit thread from 8 months ago posted in a medical subreddit. The title, "Has anyone else heard voices during MRI scans telling them to hurt themselves?" The original poster described an experience almost identical to Roberto's. Voices during a routine MRI scan, specific instructions about suicide, details about locations and times. The OP insisted they hadn't been given any sedation medication, that this was just a standard scan for chronic migraines. Marcela read through the comments, her hands growing cold. User 1. Same thing happened to me last year. Told me to crash my car on the way home. Even told me which intersection. I thought I was losing my mind. User 2. Mine said to jump from my apartment balcony. I'm on the 12th floor. It knew. How did it know? User 3. I work as an MRI tech at a private hospital in Mexico. We've had 3 patients report this in the past 6 months, all from the same machine. Management is investigating, but they're keeping it quiet. They don't want a lawsuit. Mexico, private hospital, the same machine. Marcela took a screenshot of the entire thread and sent it to her phone. Then she opened her email and sent it to Dr. Victor Mendoza, the head of radiology and her direct supervisor. His response came back 10 minutes later, even though it was past 2 in the morning. Marcela, where did you find this? Come to my office, now. She found Dr. Mendoza in the basement archives, standing in front of an unlocked filing cabinet that she'd never seen open before. He was 45, gray-haired, tired-looking, wearing the same clothes he'd worn yesterday, which meant he'd probably slept in his office. Close the door, he said. Marcela did. Dr. Mendoza pulled out a thick file folder and set it on the table between them. I wasn't supposed to show anyone this. We were specifically instructed not to discuss it publicly. But if you've already found that Reddit thread, then you need to know the full truth. The folder was labeled MRI Incident Reports, Magnetom Vida, 2019. Inside were 14 separate reports dated from March through October. Report 1, March 15th, Laura Torres, 34 cervical spine MRI. Patient became hysterical after scan, claiming she heard voices instructing her to end her life. Psychiatric evaluation ordered. Report 5, June 22nd, Carlos Mendez, 52, cardiac MRI. Patient reported hearing voice telling him to jump in front of metro train. Specific station mentioned Hidalgo. Specific time, Friday evening. Marcela closed the folder, her hands shaking. Did Carlos Mendez do it? Dr. Mendoza nodded slowly. Friday, June 28th, 9:20 p.m., Hidalgo Station. Jumped in front of an incoming train. The room tilted. Marcela had to sit down. And Laura Torres. Suicide at home, 2 weeks after her scan. How many? Marcela could barely get the words out. How many total? 14 reported incidents of patients hearing voices. 9 of those 14 patients died within 2 weeks of their scans. 7 of them jumped in front of metro trains, all at Hidalgo Station, all on Friday evenings between 9 and 9:30 p.m. Marcela thought she might vomit. Why didn't anyone shut down the machine? Why are we still using it? The hospital brought in specialists from Siemens, the company that manufactured the machine. They ran every diagnostic test. The machine is functioning perfectly. No mechanical errors, no software glitches, no electromagnetic interference, nothing. Then how? They concluded it was psychological. Patient stress, pre-existing mental health conditions. The voices were coincidental. Dr. Mendoza's expression was bitter. And the hospital administration decided that acknowledging a pattern would open us up to lawsuits. So we were told to treat each case as an isolated incident and move on. Marcela looked at the last report in the file. Report 14 dated October 10th. The patient name was redacted. The notes read, "Patient exhibited extreme psychological distress post-scan. Claimed entity inside machine instructed them to warn others. Patient self-discharged against medical advice. Current whereabouts unknown. Someone disappeared? Not disappeared. Left. Walked out in the middle of the night. Left all their belongings. We haven't been able to locate them since." Dr. Mendoza paused. "That was a week ago?" Right around the time the knocking started, Marcela thought. Her pager buzzed. The nurse's station upstairs. "Marcela, we need you. New patient just came in. Finished an MRI scan this afternoon. She's asking for you specifically. She says she has a message about Friday." Marcela looked at Dr. Mendoza. He looked back at her. Neither of them wanted to go upstairs, but they both knew they had to. They found Carmen Delgado in room 312, sitting bolt upright in bed, eyes red from crying hands, twisted together in her lap so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. 41-year-old elementary school teacher, routine MRI for chronic migraines. No sedation medication, just a standard scan. When Marcela entered the room, Carmen's head snapped up. "You're Marcela Ruiz, night shift nurse?" "Yes, I'm—" Carmen lunged out of bed and grabbed Marcela's shoulders. "Thank God, I've been trying to find you all day. They wouldn't let me out of bed. They said I needed rest, but I had to tell you, I have to warn you. Mrs. Delgado, please calm down. They told me to find you, the voices, in the machine, yesterday during my scan." Carmen's words tumbled out in a panicked rush. At first it was just noise, the banging and humming, normal MRI sounds. But then the noise started to have a pattern, like Morse code, dots and dashes. And then the pattern became syllables, and the syllables became your name. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. Marcela tried to step back, but Carmen held on. "Marcela, Marcela, Ruiz, Ruiz," over and over. And then I saw them. Saw what? The faces. Carmen's voice dropped to a whisper. I opened my eyes and looked up at the inside of the machine, the metal ceiling. And I saw faces pushing through the metal, not reflections. It was like they were on the other side trying to push through, distorted, mouths open, screaming silently. And I heard them inside my head. "Find Marcela Ruiz, night nurse, tell her, Friday, don't go. Hidalgo Station, 9:15. If she goes, she'll be number 12. Number 12. The same number Roberto had said, the same number that kept appearing in the reports. Marcela felt dizzy. She pulled out her phone to record this to have evidence, but the phone shut off. The battery had been at 87% a minute ago. She tried to turn it back on. It powered up, showed the Apple logo, then shut off again. "It doesn't want evidence," Carmen said. "My phone broke completely after my scan. I had to buy a new one. Mrs. Delgado, did the voices tell you to do anything besides warning me?" Carmen looked down at her left wrist. A bandage covered it, white gauze wrapped around and around. She pulled the bandage aside to show Marcela a long, shallow cut that had been stitched closed. "They told me to cut deep, into the vein. They said if I did it, I would hear more clearly." I would understand the truth. I would be free. Her voice cracked. I picked up the knife. I was going to do it, but then I thought about my daughter. She's 7 years old. Who would pick her up from school if I died? Tears ran down Carmen's face. So I put the knife down, and the voices got angry. They screamed inside my head, not through my ears, but directly into my brain. They screamed, "Then go tell her. Tell Marcela if she dies, you take her place. You'll be number 12. The words echoed in the small hospital room. Marcela looked at Dr. Mendoza, who had gone pale. "I need a minute," Marcela said, and walked out of the room toward the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face and stared at herself in the mirror. Two patients, two completely different people, both telling the same story, both mentioning Friday Hidalgo Station, 9:15 p.m., and the number 12. Marcela dried her face with a paper towel and threw it in the trash. She turned to leave, then stopped. The trash can was empty. She'd just thrown the paper towel in there. She'd seen it land. But now the trash can was completely empty. Marcela looked down at the floor. Nothing. She looked at the counter. Nothing. Then she saw it. On top of the closed toilet seat lid, a wet paper towel folded into a deliberate shape. She picked it up and unfolded it. 3 words written in lipstick that Marcela wasn't wearing and hadn't been wearing. Friday, you, 12. Her hands started shaking so badly that she dropped the paper towel. It landed in the sink, and the red lipstick began to run under the water, still dripping from the faucet, spreading like blood. From the last bathroom stall she heard breathing, heavy, wet, like someone who'd been running. "Hello?" Marcela's voice came out as a whisper. No response. She knelt down slowly and looked under the stall door. Someone was in there. She could see a dark shape, but there were no feet touching the ground. The shape was hovering 20 centimeters above the floor. Marcela ran. She burst out of the bathroom and into the hallway, fumbling for her phone. No signal. That was impossible. There was always signal here. She ran to the nurse's station and grabbed the landline. Dead. No dial tone. Then, 5 seconds later, a sound came through the receiver. Not a dial tone. Breathing. Multiple people breathing. In, out, in, out. Not synchronized. Overlapping. Like a dozen people were on the other end of the line, all breathing directly into the phone. Marcela slammed the receiver down. She needed to leave. She needed to go home. But her purse was downstairs in the locker room, her keys, her ID, everything. The locker room was next to the MRI suite. Thursday, October 17th, 2019, 2:47 a.m. Marcela descended the stairs to the second floor, every instinct screaming at her to turn around, to run the other way, to abandon her belongings and just get out of the building. But she needed her keys to get home. She needed her ID to get through security. She needed her wallet. The hallway was darker than before. Half the fluorescent lights had gone out, leaving pools of shadow between islands of sickly yellow illumination. The emergency lights at the far end blinked their steady rhythm, on, off, and in that intermittent red glow, Marcela could see the MRI suite door. It was open, just slightly. A crack of darkness visible between the door and the frame. That door locked automatically. It required a key card to open. It should not be open. Marcela walked forward slowly, trying to keep her footsteps quiet, but her rubber-soled shoes still squeaked with every step, announcing her approach to whatever might be waiting in that room. As she got closer, she heard it again, the breathing. Multiple people. Heavy. Arrhythmic, coming from inside the MRI suite. In, out, in, out, in, out. Like 10 or 12 people standing in the darkness, all breathing at different rates, all breathing too loudly, all breathing directly at the doorway as if they knew she was coming. Marcela pulled out her phone and opened the camera, turning on the flash. She needed evidence. She needed proof that this was real, that she wasn't losing her mind. She pushed the door open wider and shined the light inside. Empty. The MRI suite was completely empty. Just the machine, silent and still in the center of the room, its bore opening like a mouth in a scream. But something was wrong. Marcela stepped inside and looked at the control station. The computer monitors were on, all of them, glowing blue, even though the entire system had been shut down hours ago. And on the main monitor text was appearing one letter at a time as if someone was typing it in real time. COME, INSIDE, WEHAVE, BEEN, Marcela took a photo. The flash lit up the room in a burst of white light that left purple afterimages dancing in her vision. She looked at the photo on her phone. The text was gone. The monitor showed only a black screen. But in the reflection of that black screen in the digital photograph, she could see something else. A figure, standing behind her, tall, too thin, head tilted at an angle that human necks couldn't achieve. Marcela spun around. Nothing. No one. The room was empty. She looked back at her phone. In the photograph, the figure was closer, still behind her, still impossibly thin, still tilting its head at that broken angle. The door slammed shut. Marcela jumped and dropped her phone. It skittered across the floor and came to rest face up, the photograph still glowing on the screen, that impossible figure now so close in the reflection that it seemed to be reaching out toward the camera. Then the screen went black. From inside the MRI machine, from deep within the bore, came a sound. Not mechanical, not electronic. Laughter. Low, wet. Multiple voices laughing together but not quite in sync, creating a horrible discordant chorus that echoed off the metal walls and seemed to come from everywhere at once. Marcela grabbed her phone and ran for the door. It wouldn't open. The electronic lock was engaged. She swiped her keycard. Nothing. Swiped again. Nothing. Behind her, the laughter grew louder. She pounded on the door. "Help! Someone help me!" The lock clicked. The door swung open. Marcela burst into the hallway and ran toward the locker room, not looking back, not daring to look back because she could hear footsteps behind her now. Multiple footsteps. Multiple people walking in perfect unison, their shoes clicking against the linoleum in a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. She reached the locker room, grabbed her purse and keys, and ran for the exit. As she passed the MRI suite, she couldn't help but glance through the door window. The handprints were gone. The room looked normal again. But on the glass, written in condensation as if someone had breathed on it from the inside, were 3 words. "See you Friday." Marcela ran until she reached her car in the parking garage. She locked herself inside, hands shaking too badly to get the key in the ignition. It took 3 tries before the engine started. As she pulled out of the garage, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But what if it was the hospital calling about Roberto or Carmen? What if it was Dr. Mendoza? She put it on speaker. "Hello?" Silence, then breathing. That same wet, heavy breathing from before. Multiple people, all breathing at her. Into her car, into her ears. Then voices, many voices speaking together. Marcela Ruiz, 29 years old, lives alone. Apartment 4B, Calle Reforma 847. Mother Rosa Ruiz, 56, cancer patient, Hospital General. Sister Sofia Ruiz, 19, university student, takes line 3 every day. Friday, 9:15 p.m., Hidalgo Station. You choose, you or them. The call ended. Marcela sat in her car in the middle of the dark street, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what she'd just heard. They knew her address. They knew her mother's name. They knew Sofia. They knew everything, and tomorrow was Friday. Part 2 begins. Marcela drove home on autopilot, taking surface streets instead of the highway, avoiding the metro entirely, even though she wasn't planning to use it anyway. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every dark alley she passed seemed to contain shapes that moved, wrong shadows that stretched too long, figures that turned to watch her car roll by. She reached her apartment building at 3:30 in the morning. The street was empty except for a stray dog nosing through garbage and an old man smoking on a corner, his cigarette, a red ember in the darkness. Normal sights, normal sounds. The real world where machines didn't whisper and dead people didn't make phone calls. Marcela parked in the underground garage and sat in her car for 10 minutes, gathering the courage to walk to the elevator. The fluorescent lights down here buzzed and flickered just like the ones at the hospital, and every time they stuttered, she thought she saw movement in her peripheral vision. But when she turned to look, there was never anything there. She finally forced herself out of the car, locked it twice, and walked quickly to the elevator, her keys jutting out between her fingers like makeshift claws. The elevator arrived empty. She rode up to the fourth floor alone, watching the numbers climb, half expecting the elevator to stop between floors, half expecting the lights to go out and that breathing to start again. But nothing happened. The elevator dinged cheerfully at the fourth floor. The doors opened onto a normal hallway with normal lighting and normal sounds of people sleeping in their apartments, snoring and dreaming and living their oblivious lives. Apartment 4B. Marcela unlocked both deadbolts, and the chain lock stepped inside and immediately pushed her couch against the door. Ridiculous. Paranoid. But she couldn't stop herself. She turned on every light in her studio apartment. Checked the bathroom. Checked the closet. Checked under the bed, even though there was barely enough space for a shoebox under there. Empty. Everything was exactly as she'd left it 12 hours ago. Marcela sat on her bed and pulled out her laptop. Her hands were still shaking. She opened Google and started typing, no longer trying to find logical explanations, but instead searching for the truth behind what Roberto and Carmen had said. Mercy Cross Hospital history. The first results were benign, built in 1972 as a public hospital, converted to private ownership in 1995. Standard information, but Marcela kept digging, scrolling past the official hospital website and the PR-friendly articles into the deeper archives. Mercy Cross Hospital deaths unusual. Nothing relevant. Metro Hidalgo accident 1978. The search results changed. Marcela's screen filled with old news articles, some of them scanned from paper archives, the text slightly blurry but still readable. El Universal, March 15, 1978. Tragedy at Metro Hidalgo, 12 dead in derailment. Marcela clicked the article. Her Spanish was rusty but good enough to understand the basics. A metro train had derailed inside Hidalgo Station. Mechanical failure. The train had crashed into the station wall at full speed. 12 people died instantly. Dozens more injured. The investigation concluded it was a brake system malfunction. No foul play, just a terrible accident. But there was a detail buried in the third paragraph that made Marcela's blood run cold. Several survivors reported hearing warning voices moments before the accident, though they could not identify the source of these warnings. Psychologists attributed this to the brain's tendency to manufacture narrative coherence during traumatic events. Warning voices in 1978 at Hidalgo Station. Marcela searched for more. She found a blog post from 2015 archived on the Wayback Machine titled "The Cursed Station Metro Hidalgo's Dark Secret." The author claimed that Hidalgo Station had been built on top of an old cemetery from the 1960s. During construction in 1969, workers had discovered dozens of unmarked graves. The bodies were supposed to be relocated to a proper cemetery, but according to the blog, many of them had simply been buried deeper and the station was built on top of them. Every year on the anniversary of the 1978 accident, the blog post read, "People report hearing whispers in the tunnels around 9 p.m. Some say it's the voices of the 12 who died. Others say it's older, the voices of those who were never properly laid to rest." Station workers refuse to go into certain maintenance tunnels after dark. There are stories of shadows that move against the light of cold spots where the temperature drops 20 degrees in seconds of equipment that malfunctions for no reason. But the Metro Authority denies everything. They say it's superstition, urban legend, mass hysteria. Marcela searched for information about Mercy Cross Hospital's construction. It took 20 minutes of digging through city planning archives, but she finally found it. A document from 1971, digitized and uploaded to the city's historical database, Proposed site for new public hospital lot 47B, formerly San Miguel Cemetery, closed 1965. Site clearance and relocation of remains approved June 1971. San Miguel Cemetery. The hospital had been built on a cemetery, just like the metro station, Marcela kept reading. According to another archived document, San Miguel Cemetery had been a pauper's graveyard, a place where the city buried people who died with no family, no money, no one to claim them. When it closed in 1965, the city was supposed to relocate all the remains to a municipal cemetery outside the city limits. But a footnote in the document mentioned that the relocation process had been incomplete due to budget constraints. Translation, they'd moved some of the bodies and left the rest. Another search, Mercy Cross Hospital Metro Suicide Storage, 1970s. This one took longer to find, buried in the comments section of a true crime blog. An anonymous commenter claiming to be a former hospital worker had written in 2010, "I worked at Mercy Cross in the 80s, back when it was still public. We had an arrangement with the Metro Authority. When someone jumped in front of a train and the body couldn't be immediately claimed by family, they'd bring it to our morgue for temporary storage. Sometimes the bodies stayed for weeks, sometimes months, and sometimes they were never claimed at all. We weren't supposed to talk about it, but everyone knew that when the morgue got too full, they'd bury the unclaimed ones on site. In the old cemetery area, no paperwork, no ceremony. Just dig a hole and fill it back in. I left that job because I couldn't sleep anymore. I kept dreaming about all those people buried under the building, all those people who died in terror and pain, never properly mourned, never given peace." Marcela sat back from her laptop, her mind racing to connect the pieces. 1960s, San Miguel Cemetery filled with unmarked graves of the poor and forgotten. 1969 Metro Hidalgo construction begins on top of another old cemetery. Bodies not properly relocated. 1971 hospital construction begins on the San Miguel Cemetery site. Bodies not fully relocated. 1978 metro accident at Hidalgo Station. 12 people die. 1970s through 80s. Bodies of metro suicide victims stored at the hospital, some buried on site without proper procedure. 2019 new MRI machine installed on the second floor, the exact location of the old morgue area. The pattern was horrifying. The hospital and the metro station were both built on improperly consecrated burial grounds. The 12 people who died in 1978 had been buried in mass graves, some at the station, some at the hospital. And now, 41 years later, something was using the MRI machine to reach out to call for more deaths, to demand that the debt be balanced. 12 people died in 1978. They wanted 12 more. They needed 12 new deaths at Hidalgo Station to somehow complete a cycle to balance the cosmic ledger, to finally find peace or revenge, or whatever it was that kept them trapped between worlds. Marcela checked her notes from the hospital. According to Dr. Mendoza's files, 9 patients had reported hearing voices. 7 had died, all by jumping in front of trains at Hidalgo Station. 7 deaths. They needed 5 more to reach 12. But the voice on the phone had said Marcela would be number 12, which meant 11 people had already died. Which meant the count was almost complete. Marcela opened a new search tab. Metro Hidalgo Suicide 2019. The results made her stomach turn. Multiple articles, multiple people. Deaths by metro train, all at Hidalgo Station, all on Friday evenings between 9 and 9:30 p.m., all between March and October of this year. Not 7 deaths, more. The hospital's official records had only captured some of the patients who reported hearing voices. But there had been others who either hadn't gone to Mercy Cross Hospital or hadn't reported their experiences before dying. Fix applied. Removed. Elena died 2019 inches error, replaced with proper list. She scrolled through the obituaries, reading the names, looking for some connection she might have missed. Laura Torres, March 22nd, 2019. Carlos Mendez, June 28th, 2019. Ana Delgado, August 2nd, 2019. Roberto Vargas, August 9th, 2019. Carmen Ortiz, August 16th, 2019. Luis Mendoza, August 23rd, 2019. Miguel Santos, September 6th, 2019. Patricia Ruiz, September 13th, 2019. David Navarro, September 20th, 2019. Elena Lopez, September 27th, 2019. Sofia Martinez, October 4th, 2019. 11 people. The debt was almost complete. One more death would make 12, and Marcela was being called to be that 12th. She opened another search. Elena Rodriguez, 1978, Metro Hidalgo. Found it, a death certificate. Elena Rodriguez, age 43, died March 14, 1978, cause of death. Blunt force trauma sustained in Metro train derailment, Hidalgo Station. Marcela stared at the screen. Elena Rodriguez, her last name. She called her mother. It rang 6 times before Rosa answered, her voice thick with sleep. Marcela, Mia, it's 4 in the morning. What's wrong? Mom, I need to ask you something. Grandma Elena, how did she die? A long pause. Why are you asking about this now? Please, Mom, just tell me. Rosa sighed. I've told you before. It was a car accident, very sudden. She was only 43. What year? 1978, March. Why are you... March 1978, Marcela's voice cracked. Not 1,990 inches, no mija. Where did you get 1990? You weren't born until 93. Your grandmother died 15 years before you were born. Rosa sounded more awake now, concerned. Marcela, are you okay? You sound strange. How did she die? The details. I need to know the details. It wasn't a car accident. Rosa's voice dropped. I told you that because you were young and I didn't want to upset you. The truth is, she died in the metro. There was a terrible accident. A train derailed at Hidalgo Station. 12 people died. Your grandmother was one of them. Marcela couldn't breathe. You never told me. You were a child when you first asked. I didn't want you to be afraid of the metro. Later, it seemed easier to keep the lie going. I'm sorry, mija. But why does this matter now? I have to go, Mom. I love you. Don't leave the house today. Promise me. Marcela, you're scaring me. Promise me. I promise, but tell me what's happening. Marcela ended the call. She couldn't explain. She could barely process it herself. Her grandmother had died in the 1978 accident, one of the original 12. And now, 41 years later, the voices wanted Marcela. Not randomly, not coincidentally, by blood, by inheritance, by some twisted logic that said debts passed from generation to generation, that the dead could claim the living, that family ties extended beyond the grave into something dark and binding. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number, not words, a video file automatically downloading. Marcela didn't want to watch it. Every instinct told her to delete it, to throw her phone away, to run. But she had to know. She had to see. The video was 15 seconds long, shot from a security camera angle, black and white, slightly grainy time stamp in the corner. Thursday, 3:47 a.m., 43 minutes ago. The location, Metro Hidalgo Station platform, 3 Line 3, heading toward Indios Verdes. The platform was empty except for one person. A young woman with long dark hair wearing jeans and a university hoodie looking at her phone. Sophia, Marcela's sister. Marcela's heart stopped. Sophia should be asleep in her dorm room. She shouldn't be at a metro station at 4 in the morning. This had to be old footage, or fake, or... Then Marcela saw the timestamp again. Not old footage. Live, or recorded less than an hour ago. In the video, Sophia stood alone on the platform. Then from the dark tunnel, figures began to emerge. 1, 2, 3, more. Shadows that walked with wrong gaits, heads tilted at wrong angles, moving in perfect synchronization. They formed a line behind Sophia, 8 of them, 10, 12, all facing the same direction, all watching Sophia, who remained oblivious, scrolling through her phone. In the distance, train lights appeared in the tunnel, growing brighter. The video ended. Marcela grabbed her keys and ran for the door, shoving the couch aside. She had to get to Sophia. She had to warn her. She had to... Her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered while running down the stairs, not waiting for the elevator. "If you hurt her, I'll..." "She's safe." The voice was wrong. Multiple voices speaking in unison, male and female, and something else, something that had never been human. "For now, but Friday, 9:15 p.m., Hidalgo Station. You come, or we call her instead. Your choice, Marcela, you or Sophia. One of you must pay what Elena owes. My grandmother didn't owe you anything. She died with us. She was supposed to stay with us, but her body was taken away, buried elsewhere. The circle was broken. 11 of us remained trapped while 1 escaped. Now we need completion. 12 living must join 12 dead. Then the cycle ends. Then we're free." "You're insane. I'm not going to kill myself because of something that happened 40 years ago." "Then Sophia dies. Or your mother. Or a stranger. Someone will stand on that platform Friday night. Someone will jump. It can be you and the choice is clean. Or it can be someone else, and you'll live knowing you could have stopped it." The call ended. Marcela burst out of the building and into the pre-dawn darkness. She had to find Sophia. Had to make sure she was safe. Had to... Her phone buzzed again. This time a regular text from Sophia's actual number. "Chica, why you calling so late? I'm sleeping." "Everything okay?" Marcela called immediately. Sophia answered on the second ring, groggy but clearly in bed, clearly safe. "Jesus, Marcela, it's 4 a.m. What's the emergency?" "Where are you right now?" "In my dorm room, in bed. Where else would I be?" Sophia sounded annoyed now. "Why? You haven't left your room tonight. You haven't been on the metro." "The metro? It's not even running right now. Stops at midnight on weeknights. Are you drunk? Are you okay?" Marcela leaned against a wall, relief flooding through her so intensely that her legs almost gave out. "I'm fine. I just had a nightmare. Thought something happened to you." "Well, I'm fine. Can I go back to sleep now?" "Yes, but Sophia today, don't take the metro. Take an Uber to class. I'll pay for it." "Why did something happen?" "Just do it, please, as a favor to me." Sophia sighed. "Fine, you're being weird, but fine. Can I sleep now?" "I love you." "Love you too, weirdo." Marcela ended the call and looked at her phone. The video was still there in her messages. She played it again. There was Sophia, clear as day, standing on the platform, those figures behind her. But Sophia had just confirmed she was in bed. The timestamp said 3:47 a.m. The call with Rosa had ended at 4:02 a.m. Marcela had received the video at 4:15 a.m. The video was dated for tonight, but it showed Sophia at the metro station wearing clothes she wouldn't wear until tomorrow in a scenario that hadn't happened yet. It wasn't a recording. It was a prophecy, a threat, a preview of what would happen if Marcela didn't comply. She watched the video one more time, paying closer attention to the figures behind Sophia. 12 of them, all with faces that were almost human, but not quite, features that were almost recognizable, but distorted like photographs that had been left in water too long. And in the front of that line, the figure closest to Sophia, Marcela saw a woman, middle-aged. Dark hair, kind eyes, despite the wrongness of her face. Elena Rodriguez, Marcela's grandmother, one of the 12, leading the others, calling for her granddaughter to join them. Friday was today. In less than 18 hours, Marcela would have to choose: go to Hidalgo Station and offer herself to whatever was waiting there, or stay away and condemn someone else, someone innocent, someone who didn't deserve to be pulled into this nightmare. Marcela went back inside her apartment. She couldn't run. She couldn't hide. The voices knew where she lived, knew where her family lived, knew everything about her. She opened her laptop and returned to her research. But this time she searched for solutions, for ways to break curses, for information about how to stop something like this. Most of what she found was useless. New Age nonsense about sage and crystals, religious rituals that required priests and holy water, folk magic that sounded like it came from fairy tales. But then she found a forum post from someone claiming to be a curandero, a traditional Mexican healer. The post was in Spanish, translated by Google into awkward English. When the dead call for payment, you cannot refuse the debt, but you can negotiate the terms. The dead are bound by rules, by cosmic law. They cannot simply take what they want. They must be given permission. They must be invited. If you go to them willingly, they have power over you. But if you go with protection, with knowledge of their true names, with understanding of what binds them, you can speak to them as equals. You can offer alternative payment. You can break the cycle if you understand what truly holds it in place. True names, alternative payment, breaking the cycle. Marcela screenshot the post and kept searching. She found references to the concept of animas en pena, souls in purgatory, who couldn't move on because of unfinished business. They were bound to the places they died, forced to repeat their trauma, calling for others to join them so they wouldn't be alone. But the curandero's post had said something important. They were bound by rules. They couldn't just take. They had to be given permission, which meant Marcela had power. Not much, but some. She could go to Hidalgo Station. She could face them. But she didn't have to jump. She could try to talk to them, to understand what they really wanted, to find another way. It was a slim chance, but it was the only chance she had. Marcela spent the rest of the morning researching, reading everything she could find about the 1978 accident, about the 12 victims, about the history of that stretch of metro tunnel. She learned their names, their ages, their stories. She learned about Elena Rodriguez, her grandmother, who had been on her way home from work at a textile factory when the train derailed. She died instantly crushed in the impact. She'd left behind a husband and a 15-year-old daughter, Rosa. By the time the sun rose, Marcela had a plan. It was desperate and probably doomed to fail, but it was better than either jumping in front of a train or letting someone else die in her place. She slept for 3 hours, then woke to her alarm and got ready. She called Dr. Mendoza. "Marcela, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Where are you?" "I'm at home. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me at the hospital?" "I'm here now. Been here since you left. We had another incident. New patient just came in this morning. Had an MRI yesterday afternoon. She's asking for you. Says she has a message." Marcela's blood ran cold. "A message about Friday. How did you know?" "I'm coming in. Give me an hour." Marcela dressed in clean scrubs and drove to Mercy Cross Hospital, arriving just before noon. The parking garage looked different in daylight, less threatening, though she still walked quickly from her car to the elevator. Dr. Mendoza met her on the 3rd floor. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair uncombed, his usual professional demeanor replaced with barely controlled panic. "Room 408 inches, he said. "Miguel Torres, 29 years old, shoulder injury. Routine MRI, no sedation. He woke up at 3 a.m. screaming. Cut his wrist with a plastic knife from his dinner tray. Not deep enough to be fatal, but we had to sedate him. When he woke up again at 8, he told the nurse he needed to speak with you specifically. Knew your name, knew your schedule, knew about Friday." They walked to room 408. Miguel sat on the floor back against the wall, left wrist heavily bandaged. His eyes were hollow, sunken, like he hadn't slept in weeks, even though he'd only been admitted yesterday. "Marcela Ruiz," he said when she entered. His voice was flat, emotionless. "They told me you'd come?" "Who told you?" "The voices in the machine. They know everything about you. Everything about everyone. They've been watching you for a long time. Since you started working here. Since you started walking past their room every night. You're connected to them now. Through blood. Through proximity. Through knowledge." Miguel stood up slowly, moving like an old man, even though he was barely 30. "When I was in the machine yesterday, I heard them. At first just noise, but then the noise became words, and the words became a story. They told me everything. About 1978, about the 12 who died, about the debt that was never paid. I know about the accident, Marcela said. I've been researching. My grandmother was one of the victims. Then you understand. One of them was your blood, Elena Rodriguez. She was supposed to stay with them. All 12 were supposed to stay together, bound by their shared death, holding each other in the space between worlds, but Elena's body was claimed by her family, buried in a proper cemetery with prayers and flowers and people who mourned her. She escaped. She found peace. And the other 11 were left behind, trapped at Hidalgo Station, trapped in the walls of this hospital where some of their bodies were stored, trapped in the ground where they were buried without ceremony. Miguel's voice rose, taking on that same multiple voice quality that Marcela had heard on the phone. They're angry. They're lonely. They've been waiting for 41 years. They tried to call others to join them. 7 people jumped before the hospital realized and tried to fix the machine. But you can't fix what isn't broken. The machine is just a doorway, a way for them to reach through. And now they've found the perfect candidate, Elena's granddaughter. Someone with a blood connection. Someone who can complete the circle. I'm not going to kill myself, Marcela said firmly. I don't care what they think they're owed. Then they'll take someone else. Your sister Sophia, 19 years old, takes line 3 every day. They've been watching her, learning her schedule. They can call to her just as easily as they call to you. I'll stop her. I'll make sure she doesn't go near the metro. And your mother, your cousins, your friends. How many people can you protect? How long can you keep everyone away from every metro station in the city? Miguel shook his head. They don't need you specifically. They just need 12 living people to die the same way they died, to balance the cosmic ledger. They've been collecting deaths for months, small numbers, one here, one there. Easy to dismiss as coincidence, but now they're accelerating. Now they want to finish. And they chose you because you're connected, because you know the truth. Because knowledge is a form of consent. By learning about them, by thinking about them, by acknowledging their existence, you open yourself to them. Marcela felt sick. So what do I do? Just let them take me? I don't know. Miguel's eyes filled with tears. They made me tell you all this. Made me explain so you'd understand the futility of resistance. But I don't want you to die. I don't want anyone to die. I tried to refuse them. That's why I cut myself. I thought if I gave them blood, they'd leave me alone. But it doesn't work that way. They don't want blood. They want life. They want someone to choose death voluntarily the way they had death chosen for them. Dr. Mendoza stepped forward. There has to be another way. We can shut down the machine, tear it out. Demolish this whole wing if necessary. It won't help. Miguel slumped back down to the floor. The machine isn't the problem. It's just a tool, a telephone. You can destroy the phone, but the callers will still be there. They'll find another way to reach through. Another machine, another place. They're in the ground under this building. They're in the walls at Hidalgo Station. They're everywhere. Their bodies were left to rot without proper burial. Marcela knelt down next to Miguel. Did they tell you anything else? Any weaknesses? Any way to stop them? Miguel looked at her with dead eyes. They said if you don't come tonight, they'll call Sophia. And if Sophia doesn't come, they'll call someone else. Every Friday, forever, until 12 living join 12 dead. One way or another, the debt will be paid. Marcela left room 408, feeling like she'd been hollowed out. Dr. Mendoza followed her into the hallway. What are you going to do? He asked. I'm going to Hidalgo Station tonight at 9:15. Marcela, no. You can't seriously be considering. I'm not going to jump. She turned to face him. I'm going to talk to them. To try to understand what they really want. There has to be something else I can offer them. Some other way to break this cycle. And if there isn't, Marcela didn't answer because she didn't have an answer. She just knew she couldn't live with herself if she let Sophia or her mother or some innocent stranger die because she was too scared to face what was waiting for her. She went home and tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the normal sounds of her apartment building, people coming and going, living their normal lives, completely unaware that the world contained things like hungry ghosts and debts that echoed across decades, and machines that whispered secrets to the dying. At 7 p.m., her phone rang. Sophia. "Hey, Chica, you want to grab dinner? I'm done with classes." "Can't tonight, I'm working." "On Friday, I thought you had Fridays off." "Picked up an extra shift. Need the money for Mom's treatment." "You work too hard, you're going to burn out." If you only knew, Marcela thought. "I'll be fine. Hey, do me a favor. Stay in tonight. Order food. Watch Netflix. Don't go anywhere." "Why? What's going on?" "Nothing. I just want to know you're safe at home." Sophia laughed. "You're being paranoid, but okay. I was planning to stay in anyway. Got an essay due Monday." "Good. I love you." "Love you too. And Marcela, whatever's bothering you, it's going to be okay. I promise." Marcela ended the call and fought back tears. She wanted to believe Sophia. She wanted to believe everything would be okay. But tonight was Friday, and in 2 hours and 15 minutes she was going to walk into Hidalgo Station and offer herself to the dead, or she was going to find another way. Somehow. She had to. At 8:30, Marcela left her apartment wearing jeans, a black jacket, and running shoes. She took the bus to avoid the metro, arriving at Hidalgo Station at 8:50. The sun had set an hour ago. The streetlights cast orange pools of illumination that made everything beyond them seem darker by contrast. The entrance to Hidalgo Station looked like a mouth, like the bore of the MRI machine, like something waiting to swallow her whole. Marcela descended the stairs into the station. Friday night, 9 p.m. The station was busier than she'd expected. Dozens of people waiting for trains, coming home from work, heading out for dinner or drinks, living their normal lives. She bought a ticket and passed through the turnstile. The platform for Line 3 toward Indios Verdes was to the left. She walked slowly toward it, each step feeling heavier than the last, like she was walking underwater, like the air itself was becoming thicker. The platform held maybe 30 people scattered along its length. Some were talking, some scrolling on phones, some just staring into space with that glazed expression that frequent commuters develop. Marcela walked to the far end near the edge where fewer people stood. She checked her phone. 9:10, 5 minutes. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Mendoza. "I'm here, security entrance. If anything happens, I'm coming down there." Marcela didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. 9:12. The digital display said the next train would arrive in 3 minutes. 9:13. Marcela began to hear it. The whispering, soft at first, barely audible over the ambient noise of the station, but growing louder. Multiple voices, speaking in unison, calling her name. "Marcela, Marcela, come closer, come to the edge, it's time." She looked around. No one else seemed to hear it. They continued their conversations, their phones scrolling, their patient waiting. "Marcela, we've been waiting so long, so lonely. Come closer." 9:14. Train lights appeared in the distant tunnel, twin beams cutting through the darkness, growing brighter. The voices grew louder, more insistent. "Come, join us. Free us. End the cycle. Your grandmother waits. We all wait. 41 years. Come, come, come." Marcela stepped closer to the edge, not because she wanted to, because she had to see them, had to know if they were really there or if this was all in her head. She looked down at the tracks, looked into the tunnel, and saw them, 12 figures, standing on the tracks between the rails, not moving even though the train was approaching, even though they should have been crushed. They looked up at her, 12 faces distorted, wrong, like masks made of melted wax, eyes that were holes, mouths that were gaps, bodies that flickered and faded, sometimes solid, sometimes transparent. And in front, leading them, a woman with kind eyes, despite the wrongness of her face. Elena Rodriguez. Marcela's grandmother, dead for 41 years, still waiting, still trapped, still calling for her family to join her in the darkness. The train's horn blared, 9:15. "Jump," the voices said. "Now end this. Free us. Free yourself." Marcela opened her mouth to speak, to try to reason with them, to offer them something else, anything else. But before she could say a word, someone grabbed her from behind and pulled her away from the edge. Marcela, no, Dr. Mendoza. He'd come down from the security entrance. He held her shoulders, keeping her back from the platform edge as the train roared into the station. "Let me go," Marcela struggled. "I need to talk to them. You were about to jump. I saw you leaning forward." "I wasn't going to jump. I was trying to communicate." The train stopped. Doors opened. People got on and off. Normal Friday night commute. No one screaming. No one pointing at the figures on the tracks, because the figures had vanished the moment the train arrived. Marcela pulled free from Dr. Mendoza and looked back at the tracks. Empty. Just metal rails and darkness. But in her head she heard them, all 12 voices speaking as one. "You promised. You have to. The debt must be paid." The train doors closed. The train pulled away. And Marcela heard something else. Not words. A feeling. A presence. An anger that shook the station like an earthquake that no one else could feel. Next Friday, or someone else. The debt is never paid. Marcela's legs gave out. She collapsed on the platform. Dr. Mendoza caught her before she hit the ground. 2 security guards rushed over. They called for medical assistance. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, Marcela looked back one more time at the empty tracks where the 12 had stood. The vision was gone, but the feeling remained. The knowledge that she'd been given a temporary reprieve, but nothing more. That they were still waiting, still calling, still hungry for the death that would finally complete their circle and set them free. Part 3 begins. Fix applied. Added specific date. Saturday morning, October 19, 2019, arrived with brutal sunshine that felt like an insult. Marcela woke in a hospital bed, not at Mercy Cross, but at Hospital General, the public facility where her mother received her cancer treatments. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent the night after nearly dying at a metro station in the same building where her mother fought to stay alive. A nurse came in at 8 a.m. to check her vitals. Blood pressure elevated but stable. Pulse faster than normal. Temperature fine. "The doctor wants to keep you for observation," the nurse said in that professionally cheerful voice that all medical workers develop. "You hit your head pretty hard when you collapsed." Marcela touched her forehead and felt the bandage there, the dull throb of pain underneath. When she'd fallen on the platform, she'd struck her head on a metal support column. Doctor. Mendoza had told the EMTs it was a fainting spell brought on by exhaustion and low blood sugar. Technically true. He hadn't mentioned the 12 dead people standing on the metro tracks. "My mother," Marcela said. "Rosa Ruiz. Is she here? Can someone tell her I'm okay?" "She's been here since midnight. She's in the waiting room. I'll get her." 5 minutes later, Rosa burst through the door, followed closely by Sophia. Her mother looked 10 years older than she had yesterday, face drawn with worry, eyes red from crying. Sophia looked scared, younger than her 19 years, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Mia?" Rosa pulled Marcela into a crushing hug. "What happened?" "The hospital called and said you collapsed at a metro station." "Were you going home from work? Why didn't you call me?" Marcela hugged her mother back, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender soap, feeling the sharpness of Rosa's shoulder bones through her thin sweater. The cancer treatments were taking their toll. Her mother was getting thinner, frailer. How much longer could she survive? How many more rounds of chemotherapy could her body withstand? And Marcela had almost died last night. Almost left her mother alone. Almost abandoned Sophia. For what? To satisfy the demands of ghosts who'd been dead for 4 decades. "I'm fine, Mom. Just exhausted. I've been working too many shifts." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, taking Marcela's hand. You scared us. When they called Mom and said you were in the hospital, I thought—" her voice broke. "I thought something really bad had happened. I'm okay, I promise. It was just low blood sugar and fatigue, nothing serious." But it was serious because Friday hadn't ended the curse. The voices had made that clear. Next Friday, or someone else. The debt is never paid. 7 days. Marcela had 7 days to find another solution or someone would die. Maybe Sophia. Maybe her mother. Maybe a stranger who happened to be standing on the platform at the wrong time. Someone would pay the price that Marcela had refused to pay. Dr. Mendoza appeared in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking even more exhausted than before. "Mrs. Ruiz, Sophia, could I speak with Marcela alone for a moment? Medical matters." Rosa nodded and stood, though she looked reluctant to leave. "We'll be right outside, mija. Call if you need anything." When they were alone, Dr. Mendoza closed the door and sat heavily in the visitor's chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm living in a nightmare that won't end. I spent the night researching. Called in every favor I had. Contacted historians, anthropologists, people who study Mexican folklore and traditions." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through notes. "I found something. A pattern in the original accident." Marcela sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in her head. "What kind of pattern?" "The 12 people who died in 1978. I got the full list from news archives. Looked into their backgrounds, their families." Dr. Mendoza's finger traced down his screen. 9 of them had no family. No one claimed their bodies. They were buried in unmarked graves at municipal cemeteries or, according to rumors, on site at locations like Mercy Cross Hospital. And the other 3? 3 had families who claimed them? Your grandmother Elena was one of those 3. She was buried properly. Catholic funeral, headstone, the whole ceremony. He looked up from his phone. The folklore says that spirits can't rest if their bodies aren't properly consecrated. But Elena's spirit should have found peace. She was buried correctly, so why is she still trapped with the others? Marcela thought about the vision on the tracks. Elena standing in front leading the others, but her eyes had been different. Sad, apologetic. Oh, what if she's not trapped? What if she's choosing to stay? Why would she do that? Because the others can't leave. 9 of them were buried wrong, treated like garbage, no names, no prayers, no one to mourn them. Marcela felt tears building. What if Elena stayed behind because she won't abandon them? What if she's trying to help them, not hurt people? Dr. Mendoza considered this. That would explain why the messages have been warnings as much as threats. Roberto told you not to take the metro. Carmen said the voices wanted her to warn you. Even Miguel, despite his fear, gave you information that could help. They're not trying to kill people, they're trying to complete something. A ritual, a ceremony, something that was denied to them. Marcela swung her legs over the side of the bed. I need to go back. To Hidalgo Station, but not to die. To talk to them. Really talk to them. Find out what they actually need. Marcela, that's insane. You barely survived last night. If I hadn't been there. If you hadn't been there, I might have gotten answers. I wasn't going to jump. I was trying to communicate. She stood up, steadying herself against the bed. They're bound by rules. That curandero post said they can't just take what they want. They need permission. They need willing participation, which means they can be negotiated with. Or it means they're very good at manipulation. Maybe both. Marcela pulled off her hospital gown and started putting on her clothes from last night. But I have to try, because the alternative is doing nothing and letting someone else die. I can't live with that. Dr. Mendoza was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the hospital's historical records from the 1970s and 80s, when they were burying bodies on site. There might be documents, maps, locations where they buried the unclaimed victims. You think we can find where they're buried? If we can find them, maybe we can give them what they need. Proper burial, recognition, names on headstones, the respect they were denied. He stood up. It's worth a try. Better than waiting for next Friday. Will you help me? I got you into this by not speaking up sooner about the incident reports. Yes, I'll help you. Marcela checked herself out of the hospital against medical advice, told her mother she needed to pick up something from her apartment and promised to call later. Sophia wanted to come with her, but Marcela insisted she go back to the university, stay in public places, stay away from metro stations. Fix applied. Added specific date. By noon on Saturday, October 19th, Marcela and Dr. Mendoza were in the basement archives of Mercy Cross Hospital, surrounded by boxes of old records that smelled like mildew and decay. The archive room was cold lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like trapped insects. The walls were concrete block painted institutional green decades ago, now water-stained and peeling. Hospital morgue records, 1975 to 1,990 inches, Dr. Mendoza read from a box label. This is what we need. They spent 3 hours going through ledgers, written in cramped handwriting records of every body that had passed through the morgue. Most had names, family contacts, burial arrangements. But scattered throughout were entries marked NN. No name, unidentified bodies, unclaimed, disposed of. Marcela found the pattern in 1978. Starting in April, 1 month after the Metro accident, there was a spike in NN entries, and many of them had a notation, Metro victim, mass burial, Section 7. Section 7 inches, Marcela said. Where's that? Dr. Mendoza pulled out architectural plans from another box. The hospital blueprints from 1972 with modifications marked over the years. He traced his finger across the page. Section 7 was the original cemetery area. When they built the hospital, they were supposed to relocate all the remains from San Miguel Cemetery. But they only cleared the footprint for the building itself. The cemetery extended beyond that. Section 7 was the far eastern portion, near where the parking garage is now. They built a parking garage on top of a cemetery. In the 1990s, yes, the land was already owned by the hospital, cheaper to build on their own property than buy adjacent lots. Dr. Mendoza's expression was grim, which means somewhere under that parking garage there are bodies, lots of them, including presumably several of the 12 from the 1978 accident. Marcela looked at the ledger entries, names marked NN, lives reduced to 2 letters and a burial plot number. No funerals, no flowers, no one to remember them. We need to excavate, properly identify them, give them real burials. That would require permits, archaeological surveys, notification of families, if we can find any living relatives. It could take months, years. Dr. Mendoza rubbed his eyes. We don't have that kind of time. Then what do we do? Before he could answer, the archive room lights went out. Both of them froze in the sudden darkness. The fluorescent tubes had stopped buzzing. The only sound was their breathing and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Power outage, Dr. Mendoza's voice came from the darkness. Then Marcela heard it. Breathing that wasn't theirs, multiple people. In the room with him, in the darkness. She fumbled for her phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating dust motes floating in the air shelves, packed with boxes, concrete walls, and 12 figures standing in a semicircle around them. Marcela's scream caught in her throat. The figures were the same ones she'd seen on the metro tracks. Distorted faces, flickering forms, but here in this enclosed space they seemed more solid, more present, more real. Dr. Mendoza grabbed her arm. Don't move. The figure in front stepped closer. Elena Rodriguez. Marcela's grandmother. Up close she could see more details. The woman had Elena's eyes, Elena's face, but twisted by death and decades of suffering. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Then gradually a voice emerged. Not heard with ears, but felt in the bones reverberating through Marcela's skull. Marcela, nieta, granddaughter, abuela. The word came out as a whisper. You came back to find us, to help us. Elena's form flickered, becoming more transparent, then more solid. The others wanted to force you, to take you, but I told them, wait, she will understand, she will help. Help you how? Marcela's voice shook. I don't know what you need. Elena raised one hand pointing at the ledgers spread across the table. Names. We need our names. We died nameless, buried nameless, forgotten. We cannot rest until we are remembered, until someone speaks our names and knows who we were. Another figure stepped forward, male, middle-aged. Face partially collapsed on one side. I was Fernando Diaz, 42 years old, construction worker. I died March 14, 1978 at Hidalgo Station. I was going home to my wife and 3 children. No one ever found my body. No one ever said goodbye. Another voice, female, young. Maria Santos, 19, student. I died with Fernando. My parents searched for me for years. They never knew what happened. I want them to know. I want them to have closure. More voices joined in, one after another, each giving a name and age a story. 12 people who'd been erased by bureaucratic convenience, buried without ceremony, mourned by no one, because no one knew where they were. We don't want to hurt anyone, Elena said, but we're trapped. Bound to this place and to Hidalgo Station, bound by the violence of our deaths and the indignity of our burials. We tried to ask for help. We reached through the machine because it was the only way we could speak. But people heard our voices and thought we were demons, thought we wanted them to die. The 7 people who jumped, Marcela said. Did you make them do it? We tried to warn them away, to keep them safe. But they heard our pain and thought it was a command. They felt our desperation and thought it was a threat. We never wanted more death. We wanted acknowledgement, recognition, release. Then why did you tell them to jump? Why did you threaten my sister? Elena's face twisted with anguish. Because we're not always in control. The anger is so strong, the loneliness, 41 years of being forgotten. Sometimes the rage takes over and we say things we don't mean, do things we don't want. We're trapped in our moment of death, feeling that terror over and over. And sometimes we want others to feel it too, to understand, to join us so we're not alone. One of the other figures spoke, voice harsh and bitter. Every Friday at 9:15 we relive it. The train coming. The impact, the darkness, the pain, over and over, never ending. We thought if we could find 12 others to die the same way to share our fate, the cycle would break. The cosmic balance would be restored. We would be freed. But that's not what you really need, Marcela said, understanding flooding through her. You don't need more death. You need to be mourned, to be remembered, to have your name spoken and your lives acknowledged. Elena nodded, tears streaming down her transparent face. Yes, but we're bound by the rules of death. We can only be freed by living hands. Someone alive must speak our names, must tell our stories, must give us the funeral we were denied. Can you do that? Marcela, can you give us what we need? Dr. Mendoza stepped forward. We have your names now. We can find your families or what's left of them. We can arrange for proper memorial services. We can ensure you're remembered. The 12 figures looked at each other. Some seemed hopeful. Others remained skeptical, angry, hurt, too deeply to trust. Fernando spoke again. Words are easy. Promises are easy. The hospital promised to treat our bodies with dignity. Look how that turned out. We need more than words. We need action, proof. What kind of proof? Marcela asked. The place where we're buried. Section 7. It's under concrete now, under a parking garage. Our bones are trapped beneath tons of steel and stone. As long as we're buried there, forgotten and unmarked, we cannot fully rest. The parking garage must come down. The ground must be consecrated. Headstones must be placed. Our names must be carved in stone so they can never be forgotten again. Marcela looked at Dr. Mendoza. Can the hospital do that, demolish the parking garage? I don't know. That would require approval from administration, from the board of directors. It would cost millions, take months of construction. Where would staff and patients park in the meantime? He shook his head. I can present the request, but I doubt they'll agree. The hospital cares about liability and PR, not about righting wrongs from 40 years ago. Then what do we do? Marcela felt desperation rising. There has to be something. Elena drifted closer, her form flickering like a candle flame. There is another way, faster, smaller, but meaningful. She pointed upward toward the floors above. The machine, the MRI, it sits directly above where 9 of us are buried. It's become a conduit for our voices, a bridge between our world and yours. If that machine were removed, if the ground beneath it were opened and blessed, if a memorial were placed there, it would be enough. Not everything we need, but enough to begin the healing, enough to let us hope for eventual release. Removing the MRI, Dr. Mendoza said slowly. That's still expensive, but more feasible than demolishing an entire parking structure. We'd need to replace it, of course, but we could claim mechanical issues, safety concerns. Move it to a different location, convert that space into something else? A memorial chapel, Marcela said. Small, quiet, with 12 names engraved on a plaque. A place where families could come to pay respects, where we could hold a proper ceremony for those who never had one. The 12 figures drew closer together, conferring in whispers that sounded like wind through dead leaves. Finally, Elena turned back to Marcela. If you can do this, remove the machine, bless the ground, place the memorial, we will release our claim on you and your family. No more threats, no more calling for death. We will wait quietly for the rest of the work to be done, for the parking garage to eventually come down, for our bones to be properly moved for full justice. But we can wait in peace if we know someone is working on our behalf, if we know we haven't been forgotten again. I'll do it, Marcela said. I promise you, I'll make sure it happens. Be careful with promises. Fernando's voice was sharp. We've heard promises before. They mean nothing without action. Then you'll see action, starting Monday. I'll go to the hospital administration. I'll tell them everything. I'll make them understand. Elena reached out as if to touch Marcela's face, but her hand passed through like smoke. You have 7 days until next Friday. If by then we see no progress, no real effort, the anger will take control again. We won't be able to stop ourselves from calling for death. Someone will die. Maybe you, maybe Sophia, maybe a stranger. The hunger will consume us and we'll do terrible things we don't want to do. The lights flickered back on. Marcela blinked in the sudden brightness. When her vision cleared, the 12 figures were gone. Only she and Doctor. Mendoza remained in the archive room, surrounded by dusty boxes and old records, and the weight of knowing what needed to be done. Dr. Mendoza looked at his watch. It's 3 p.m. on Saturday. Monday morning, I'll request an emergency meeting with hospital administration. I'll present the evidence, the incident reports, the patient deaths, the connection to the burial ground. I'll recommend removing the MRI as a safety precaution. Will they listen? They'll listen to the lawsuit threat. 12 families of people who died after having MRIs at our facility. The media attention that could bring. The damage to the hospital's reputation. They'll listen to that. He started gathering the ledgers and documents. But Marcela, you should know, even if they approve removing the machine, creating a memorial, blessing the ground, there's no guarantee it will work. We're dealing with forces we don't understand. This could all be for nothing. Or it could save lives, including mine. Marcela helped him pack the documents into boxes. I have to try. They spent the rest of the afternoon and evening organizing their evidence, building a case to present to the administration. Dr. Mendoza made calls to lawyers, to historians, to anyone who could support their position. Marcela researched similar cases, finding precedents where hospitals had relocated equipment or created memorials after discovering burial grounds on their property. By midnight, they had a presentation ready, compelling, professional, grounded in legal liability and public relations rather than in ghosts and curses, because administration would never approve anything that sounded like superstition. Marcela went home exhausted, but feeling something she hadn't felt since Thursday night hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe she could help the 12 find peace without anyone else dying. Maybe she could break the cycle. She slept deeply for the first time in days, dreaming not of whispers and darkness, but of a small chapel bathed in sunlight, 12 names carved in polished stone, families gathering to finally say goodbye to loved ones lost decades ago. Fix applied. Added specific date. Sunday, October 20th, passed in tense waiting. Marcela stayed home, answering worried calls from her mother and Sophia, assuring them she was fine, just resting. She avoided the metro, took a taxi when she needed to go out, stayed away from Mercy Cross Hospital and Hidalgo Station, and anywhere the 12 might reach her. Fix applied. Added specific date Monday morning, October 21st, 2019, arrived cold and gray. Marcela dressed in her most professional clothes and met Dr. Mendoza in the hospital parking garage at 7 a.m. They walked together to the administrative wing carrying boxes of evidence ready to make their case. The meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. In attendance, the hospital director, the chief financial officer, the head of legal affairs, and 2 members of the board of directors. Dr. Mendoza had called in every favor, pulled every string to get this meeting scheduled on such short notice. They presented for 45 minutes. Dr. Mendoza led explaining the patient incidents, the connection to the burial ground, the potential liability. Marcela spoke about the historical injustice, the unmarked graves, the families who never knew what happened to their loved ones. They showed documents, ledgers, architectural plans, obituaries, news articles about the 1978 accident. The hospital director listened with an expression of increasing concern. The CFO took notes. The legal affairs officer looked like she was calculating lawsuit damages in her head. When they finished, the director leaned back in his chair. "This is disturbing. If what you're saying is true, this hospital has a significant problem. But I have to ask, do we have any evidence that the MRI machine itself is malfunctioning? Any technical data suggesting it's unsafe?" "The machine functions perfectly," Dr. Mendoza admitted. "From a mechanical standpoint, there's nothing wrong with it." "Then why remove it? That's a $2.7 million piece of equipment. We'd need to replace it, find a new location, months of construction, all because of what bad luck coincidence." "Pattern," Marcela said firmly. 9 patients reported hearing voices after using that specific machine. 7 of them died by suicide within 2 weeks. That's not coincidence. That's a clear pattern that makes the hospital liable. The legal officer nodded. "She's right. If families of the victims discover this pattern and hire a lawyer, we're looking at massive settlements. Not to mention the PR nightmare when this goes public." "Which it will," Dr. Mendoza added. "One of the patients, Miguel Torres, is already talking to journalists. He's determined to make sure people know what happened to him. It's only a matter of time before this becomes a national story." The director exchanged looks with the board members. They had a whispered conference that lasted 5 minutes. Finally, the director turned back to Marcela and Dr. Mendoza. "Here's what we'll do. We'll shut down the MRI suite immediately, citing equipment evaluation and facility renovation. We'll hire an independent team to inspect the machine and the room. If they find anything, any technical issue, any environmental factor that could explain the patient experiences, we'll document it thoroughly. Meanwhile, we'll consult with our lawyers about the best course of action regarding the burial ground situation." "How long will this take?" Marcela asked. "The inspection probably 2 weeks. The legal consultation another week. After that, we'll make a decision about whether to relocate the machine or create some kind of memorial space." The director's expression was stern. "But I want to be clear. We're doing this because of liability concerns, not because we believe in ghosts or curses. We're a modern medical facility. We deal in science and evidence." "I understand," Marcela said, even though she wanted to scream at him that science and evidence were standing right in front of him, that 12 people had died and were trapped in suffering because of the hospital's negligence decades ago. But she bit her tongue. The important thing was that they were taking action. Slow action, bureaucratic action, but action nonetheless. The meeting ended. Marcela and Dr. Mendoza left the administrative wing and walked toward the MRI suite on the 2nd floor. 2 weeks for inspection, Marcela said. That's past Friday, past the deadline. I know. We'll have to hope it's enough. Doctor. Mendoza stopped outside the MRI suite. I'll shut it down now. Put up signs saying it's closed for maintenance. No more patients will go through that machine. They entered the suite. The MRI sat silent and still, the bore opening dark. Marcela approached it slowly, half expecting to hear whispers, to see figures emerging from the shadows. But there was nothing. Just a machine. Just metal and magnets and technology that had inadvertently become a bridge between worlds. Dr. Mendoza began the shutdown procedure, entering commands on the computer, draining the liquid helium coolant, powering down the electromagnetic coils. The process would take hours, but once started, it couldn't be reversed without significant technical support. There, he said when the final command was entered, "It's done. The machine is offline." Marcela felt a weight lift from her chest. One step completed. Not enough, but something. Progress. She went home and slept through the afternoon, exhausted from the tension of the past few days. When she woke at 6 p.m., she had 17 missed calls, 3 from her mother, 2 from Sophia, 12 from Dr. Mendoza. She called him back immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Marcela, thank God. There's been another incident." Her blood turned to ice. "What happened?" "New patient. Anna Morales, 35 years old. She had an MRI 3 weeks ago, before we knew about the pattern, before we started tracking these cases. She came to the ER this morning in hysterics, saying she's been hearing voices since her scan, saying they're getting louder, saying they want her to find you." "Find me why?" "She says the voices told her that the hospital agreed to help them, but it's not enough. Not fast enough. They want proof. They want to see the ground opened. They want to see the memorial placed. They want it done before Friday, or they'll call someone to the tracks." Her exact words, "Tell Marcela the debt is never paid. 1 week isn't enough. They're angry. They're hungry. They can't wait anymore." Marcela felt her hope crumbling. "We did what they asked. We're removing the machine. We're working on the memorial." "Apparently it's not enough. Or some of them have lost patience. Marcela, I think you need to talk to them directly. One more time. Try to buy more time. Make them understand that these things take time in the real world." "How do I talk to them? I can't just go back to Hidalgo Station and stand on the platform hoping they show up." "The MRI suite. They're strongest there. That's where they've been reaching through. Go there, tonight. Try to communicate. It's the only chance we have to prevent Friday from becoming another tragedy." Marcela looked at the clock. 7 p.m., Monday evening. She had 4 days until Friday. 4 days to somehow convince 12 angry ghosts that the slow wheels of hospital bureaucracy would eventually give them what they needed. "I'll go," she said, "but I need backup. Someone has to be there in case something goes wrong. I'll be there. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Marcela changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, grabbed her keys and phone, and drove to Mercy Cross Hospital as the sun set and the city lights began to glow. The hospital at night looked different, more sinister. Its white walls turned gray in the dim light, its windows like dark eyes watching her approach. Dr. Mendoza met her at the side entrance. "I told security we're doing equipment maintenance. They won't bother us." They rode the elevator to the second floor in silence. The hallway of the radiology department was dark, most of the lights turned off to save electricity during non-operating hours. Their footsteps echoed on the linoleum, loud in the quiet building. The MRI suite door was locked. Dr. Mendoza swiped his keycard and they entered. He turned on only the emergency lights, leaving the room in dim red illumination. The MRI machine sat like a silent monolith, no longer humming with power, no longer generating its massive magnetic field. "Now what?" Marcela asked. "Now you talk. Tell them what we're doing. Ask them to be patient." Marcela felt ridiculous, talking to an empty room. But she'd seen the 12, she'd heard their voices. She knew they were real. "Elena," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Grandmother, I know you're listening. I did what you asked. The machine is shut down. The hospital is working on creating a memorial, but it takes time. These things can't happen overnight. I'm begging you. Please wait. Please give us more time." Silence. Just the hum of the ventilation system and the tick of cooling metal in the MRI machine. "Please," Marcela tried again. "I know you're angry. I know you've been waiting for 41 years and every day must feel like torture, but we're trying. We're really trying. Just wait a little longer." The temperature in the room dropped. Marcela's breath misted in the air. The emergency lights flickered. And then they came. Not all 12, just 3. Elena in the center, flanked by Fernando and Maria. They materialized slowly like images developing on film, growing more solid until Marcela could see the details of their faces, the pain in their eyes. "We're trying to wait," Elena said, her voice echoing with that strange, multiple voice quality. "But the others are losing control. The anger is too strong. The hunger. Every Friday at 9:15 we're pulled back to that moment. The train coming, the impact, the terror, and every time the pain is fresh, the rage builds. Some of us want peace, but others want revenge." Fernando stepped forward. "You shut down the machine. That's good, but it's not enough. The ground beneath is still desecrated. Our bones are still trapped under concrete, still unmarked, still forgotten. We need more." "I can't demolish the building," Marcela said desperately. "I don't have that power. I'm just a nurse." "Then find someone who does." Maria's voice was sharp, bitter. "You're connected to us by blood, by proximity, by knowledge. That connection makes you responsible. You have to make them understand. You have to force them to act faster." "How?" "Make them see us," Elena said. "Make them hear us. Make them understand we're not going away. This hospital is built on our graves. We're in the walls, in the foundation. Every patient who walks these halls walks above our bones. Make them understand that this hospital will never be clean, never be safe until we're given what we deserve." Dr. Mendoza cleared his throat. "The administration won't respond to threats. If we tell them ghosts are haunting the hospital, they'll think we're insane. We need to work within the system." "The system failed us." Fernando's form flickered with anger. "The system buried us like garbage and forgot about us. Why should we trust the system now?" "Because it's the only option we have." Marcela's voice rose, frustration boiling over. "I can't wave a magic wand and fix everything. I can't bring you back to life. I can't erase 40 years of injustice. All I can do is work with what exists, and that means hospitals and bureaucracy and slow progress. If you can't accept that, then I don't know what to tell you." The 3 figures were silent. Then Elena spoke, her voice softer. "You're right, we're asking too much, expecting miracles. But Marcela, you have to understand, we're not in control anymore. The rage, the hunger, it's like a separate entity. It grows stronger every day. By Friday it will take over completely. And when it does, someone will die. Maybe many people. We won't be able to stop it. Then fight it. Resist." "You said you don't want more death. Prove it." "We'll try." Elena's form began to fade. "But try might not be enough. If Friday comes and we haven't seen real progress, ground broken, concrete removed, names carved, the hunger will consume us. And then no one on that platform will be safe." The 3 figures vanished. The temperature returned to normal. The lights stopped flickering. Marcela turned to Dr. Mendoza. "We need to do something before Friday, something visible, something they can see from wherever they are. Like what the hospital won't approve major construction in 4 days. Then we do it ourselves. We find Section 7. We break through the concrete. We dig down until we find bones. We prove to the administration that there really are bodies buried there. Once they see physical evidence, they'll have to act faster. That's destruction of property, trespassing, possibly desecration of human remains if we do it wrong." Dr. Mendoza shook his head. "Oh, we could both lose our jobs, face criminal charges. And if we don't do it, people die on Friday. possibly including my sister. Marcela looked at him steadily. I'm doing this with or without you, but I could use the help. Dr. Mendoza was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Section 7 is under the east corner of the parking garage. We'd need equipment, jackhammers, excavation tools, and we'd need to do it at night when no one's around. Wednesday night, 2 days before Friday. That gives us Tuesday to gather equipment and plan. This is insane. Yes, but what choice do we have? Dr. Mendoza pulled out his phone and started making a list. We'll need more than just the two of us. People who can keep secrets. People who believe us. Let me make some calls. Fix applied. Added specific date Tuesday, October 22nd was spent in preparation. Doctor. Mendoza recruited 3 other staff members, a janitor who'd worked at the hospital for 30 years, and remembered when they used to bury bodies on site, an ER nurse who'd lost her sister to suicide and believed in restless spirits, and a radiology technician who'd operated the cursed MRI machine and heard things he couldn't explain. They gathered equipment, a jackhammer rented under false pretenses, shovels, pickaxes, flashlights. Dr. Mendoza obtained the architectural plans showing exactly where Section 7 should be, calculating the spot in the parking garage that sat directly above the old burial ground. Marcela spent Tuesday evening with her mother and Sophia, knowing that if retry, this response paused because Claude reached its max length for a message. It continued to nudge Claude along. Continue.